Hello and good morning. I welcome you all to today's daily newspaper digest. This is a place where every single day we analyze the most important news stories from the Hindu newspaper from our examination point of view. And in the end of the session, we also have a practice quiz to make sure that you can test yourself based on whatever we have studied. These are the topics that we have taken up from today's Hindu newspaper. A range of topics from polity, from environment, international relations, and even science. Let's begin with the first article then. The first topic that we have in today's newspaper is about the Election Commission. Now, as all of you know, the background of it, Election Commission of India is a constitutional body set up under Article 324. This is a body that has a responsibility to conduct elections for the president, the vice president, the parliament, and the state legislature in India. Now, the Constitution of India says that the Election Commission of India shall consist of a chief election commissioner and as many election commissioners as the president wants from time to time. As of now, it's a three-member body. Since 1993, it has been a three-member body only. But the gist of this article is not about how many members there are. The point of this article is an appointment method. Now, please understand this. The Constitution originally did not say anything about the appointment method. They did not even tell anything about the eligibility criteria. Such an important body that has to uphold the democracy of the country has no appointment method and no appointment criteria mentioned in the Constitution. So, for the longest time, the process that was followed was that they were appointed by the President of India, which is mentioned in the Constitution, but how, that is not mentioned. So, President would appoint them on the advice of the Council of Ministers headed by the Prime Minister. So, in other words, whoever the Prime Minister wanted, that person would become the election commissioner. That was the entire process. Now, the problem is any ruling party would obviously want to appoint people who are friendly to them on these positions. And that became a problematic issue. That to uphold a democracy, we need a body, and that body is now being appointed, or that body now is filled with people who are closer to the government. And that is where the issue started. So what happened? A couple of years back, there was an appeal filed in the Supreme Court. The appeal was that we need to change this method. That we cannot just let the government appoint the election commissioner. There has to be a role of the opposition parties. There has to be a role of someone else. Because if you look at even some lesser important bodies, there are so many statutory bodies and constitutional bodies. Look at, for example, Lokpal, National Human Rights Commission, CVC, CIC, all of them in their appointment method have a committee. The committee that tells the president who to appoint. But in election commission, that was not the case. Now, hearing this matter, the Supreme Court had ruled in March 2023, almost exactly 2 years ago, that there will be an appointment committee from now onwards. The Supreme Court had said that there will be an appointment committee of Prime Minister, Leader of the Opposition of the Lok Sabha, and the Chief Justice of India. These three people together would advise the President of India, and based on that advice, the President shall appoint the election commissioner. That was the entire idea. This is what the Supreme Court had said. Now, you tell me, would the government be happy about it? Doesn't matter which party is in power, every government wants control over these bodies. They want control over the appointment procedure. In this method of three people, the government did not have a majority because one person was from the government, one from the opposition, and other from the judiciary. So the government, what they did was they introduced a new law. That law changed this appointment committee. As per the new law, now the appointment committee shall consist of Prime Minister, Leader of the Opposition of the Lok Sabha, and a cabinet minister of the choice of the Prime Minister. So they replace the Chief Justice of India with a cabinet minister that has to be appointed by the Prime Minister. This is where the problems start because now the government has a 2-1 majority in this committee. So obviously whatever the government decides will still be considered as a final word. The government's objective was simple, that they wanted to retain control over such committees, and this is why the government introduced this law, having cabinet minister in place of the Chief Justice of India. Obviously, opposition parties have not been happy, but them not being happy has not really affected the government. In fact, very recently, we just saw appointment of a new chief election commissioner has happened through this committee only. Now, this matter has again been appealed in the Supreme Court. The petitioner says that Supreme Court cannot allow this. The Supreme Court should not allow that. In such a situation, we cannot have this, that we allow anyone to actually, or we allow anyone to pass a law that leads to the appointment of, or that leads to changing of the Supreme Court judgment. If the Supreme Court has given a certain judgment, then it has to be respected. If the government cannot respect that, then the Supreme Court should step in that matter. This is where the matter is in the Supreme Court right now. Although again, Supreme Court has not heard this, and the Supreme Court, before they could hear the matter, has now seen that we have a new chief election commissioner also appointed. Now, there have been multiple Supreme Court cases where the Supreme Court has said that election is a very pious exercise and the body conducting the election should work independently. Now, the point is, if you expect the government, if you expect the election commission to work independently, you have to first start with the appointment method. Unless you actually have a independent appointment method, unless you get them free of the government interference, how can you expect them to work independently? This is why the selection committee has issues that there are no checks and balances in place now, because government has a 2-1 majority. There is no transparency in place because again the government would want to appoint the officers that are close to them, and dissenting views means even in the 2-1 formation, whatever the leader of the opposition says, even if he or she dissents, their views would not really count for much, because the law doesn't say that all of them should come to a consensus. The law says that decision will be taken by a majority, and we all know when decisions are taken by a majority, then obviously anyone who gives a dissenting view does not really matter much. This is where the problem is. On the one hand, you consider our democracy to be so important, and on the other hand, the body that is responsible for upholding our democratic values, that body and its appointment procedure has been filled with this controversy. Not just this, even the eligibility criteria thing was missing earlier. As I told you, the constitution does not say what shall be the eligibility criteria, who can be the election commissioner. At least now, as per the new law, there is an eligibility criteria that the person should be at the post of equivalent of secretary to the government of India. So basically, it is the senior IAS officers mostly who will get to these posts now. If you look at other countries, look at UK, look at US, in all these, there is an independent procedure. In US, for example, there are members from both the parties, that is the Republicans and the Democrats, that come together. In India, on the other hand, we have given a much better, much stronger hand to the government. If you would have noticed, in Israel a few months back, before this Hamas issue started, there was a huge protest in Israel about the judicial appointment process only. Because the government wanted to change the judicial process, they wanted to make sure that, similar to India, Supreme Court judges are appointed by a committee where government is in majority. And it led to so many people coming out on the streets, protesting in large numbers. So appointment of judges has always been a very touchy issue. It's very similar to the appointment of the election commissioner as well. That when these bodies are supposed to be independent and when the government tries to control it, this is where it leads to such kind of a reaction. Now, it might have many consequences for Indian democracy. It might lead to reduction in trust of the voter. It might lead to challenges in free and fair election. It might lead to political influence as well. Again, these are assumptions. It's not that it will happen, but it's always better to have a much better transparent manner of appointment of these people rather than giving an open hand and a stronger hand to the government. Now, just a bit of other information about the election commission and this issue of independence of the appointment. As I told you earlier, it is Article 324 of the Constitution that says that the election commission will conduct election in an independent manner. So please understand, in the working of the election commission, they are not supposed to take orders from any ministry in the government. They decide everything about the election. They decide when the election will be held, where, what will be the schedule, every single thing about the election, from registration of voters, registration of political parties, disqualification, everything else. It is the election commission that decides. The rules and regulations are given in Representation of People Act 1951. The Supreme Court also, as I said, in multiple cases, had talked about how it is important to have an independent election commission. The famous case of T.N. Seshan was the earlier chief election commissioner. In this case, again, Supreme Court reinforced the need to have an independent election commission. There have been certain suggestions such as go back to the original idea that the CJI had that the CJI should be in the panel, or maybe allow the parliament to debate. But again, government has not accepted this. The government is happy with the way that the current law is. The matter is still in the Supreme Court. It remains to be seen whether the Supreme Court goes back to its judgment or allows the government to continue with the new version of the law. Before we move on to the second article, a quick announcement here. You can download the current affair magazine and notes, which has a lot of important information for you, including previous year questions, current affair PDFs, weekly analysis, and much, much, much more. Check out the description of this video to know how to download, how to get access to this. You can also call on this number. These are again extremely, extremely helpful for all of you. If you're looking to join our offline courses, there are multiple centers offering you such courses with great teachers. In Delhi, we have a couple of centers in Karol, Bagh and Mukherjee, Nagar. Then we also have centers in Patna, Prayagraj. These are the dates on which the batches begin. For any more information about this, again, check out the description of the video. You can get all the information right there. The second article that we have here is about the India-US defense ties. As you know, our Prime Minister was recently in the US when he met Donald Trump as well. Apart from a lot of headlines about how the about how the tariffs have been imposed by America, how India should retaliate to it, how India has actually responded to America by reducing tariffs on a lot of things. Apart from all of that, the one interesting thing that came out was the defense deals between the two. Now, India for the longest time has been trying to diversify our buying of weapons from different countries. We buy a lot of weapons from Russia, from France, from Israel, and from US as well. The interesting part is that our weaponry, if you actually see how many weapons and what are different types of things that we use, we are still dependent a lot on USSR era and current Russian import. However, increasingly we are diversifying it. America is also interested in offering us many more weapons now. And this particular visit has led to many agreements being signed, which makes it important to understand where do we stand as of now. If you remember a couple of days back, in this session, we also discussed how India has been improving our defense export also. So we also are producing a lot of weapons, sending into the other countries. And a lot of our weapon export also goes to the US. You will be surprised to know that if you look at the countries to which we have sold most of the equipment, America comes at the top. Now, it's not that we are selling them high-end weapons, we are selling them multiple equipments, ammunition, etc. But if in our defense export, you will see America at the top. So we are sending a lot of stuff to America. Now, these are the key agreements that were talked about by the two leaders in this particular visit. There was an agreement on Javelin anti-tank guided missile. This is in the news in the Ukraine-Russia war. Ukraine's government has been using it. They have had it from America under Joe Biden, and they have been using it against Russia. Expected to be produced in India in a joint venture, which strengthens our own missile development procedure. It will also be integrated into India's own systems. Then there has also been talk about Striker infantry combat vehicles. India and US have agreed to co-produce this as well. This will be used for transporting troops from one place to other. Then we also have an agreement on P-8I maritime patrol aircraft. These are very important aircraft, especially to keep an eye over water. These are aircraft that actually can fly very low and can keep an eye on the Navy that is present in the Indian Ocean. India is purchasing 6 more of these aircraft, which enhances our own maritime awareness. These are also important for anti-submarine warfare. Then a 10-year framework for India-US major defense partnership has also been signed. There are multiple areas where the two countries will now be focusing on together, including cyber defense, space security, etc. Now, again, it's funny to look at it this way, but you would have read this in storybooks that when in a big kingdom there is a new king that comes in, what happens is many people around the world then come to the king to give their offerings. That I have this present for you, I have this present for you, congratulations for being the king. It's very similar to that of the situation where Donald Trump is right now. So he's become the American president, And now countries around the world are kind of offering him one by one that, see, we have to offer this for you, we have to offer this for you. So this is something from India's side as well, that we are offering that, okay, we'll put down the secure, we'll put down our tariffs, we'll put down our duties on certain products. Other deals signed included the Autonomous System Industry Alliance Initiative, where the private partnership with the private companies from the two countries are collaborating. For example, Mahindra Group from India and the Enduril Industries from the US are working together on drone technology. Apart from this, L3 Harris and Bharat Electronics Limited are also co-developing active towed array sonar systems, that is for our navy, because submarines and water warfare also, or rather ocean warfare also, has become a major cause of concern for countries around the world. India is also considering fifth generation fighter aircraft technology transfer. We are looking for technology transfer. We don't just want to co-produce here, we want to learn the technology so that we can produce on our own in the future. Having said that, there are still multiple challenges that remain in these acquisitions. It's not just about signing the agreement. Signing the agreement is, by the way, the easiest step. The problem starts after that. For example, one big problem, there has been a delay in the GE jet engine deal. Now, see, when you talk about fighter jets, Tejas or any other fighter jet, F-35, the most important component of a fighter jet is the engine. That is the hardest thing to build. Everything else is secondary, everything else can be done. But engines are the most important parts of a fighter jet. So India has been in talk with the US for a long time now to import their General Electric GE engines, make them in India. But this has been delayed, or this deal has been delayed considerably. Now, these engines, F404, F414 jet engines, are extremely important for India's Tejas program, but they are yet to be delivered. There were talks earlier a few months back that they will be co-produced in India, and from India it will be sold to other countries, but that has not happened, because of which our own Tejas program is running on delay. We are also negotiating at least 80% transfer of technology so that we can make these on our own. The US president recently, just a few days back, has also offered that America will be happy to sell F-35 fighter jets to India. However, it's not that simple that you can just buy a jet and keep flying. Whatever jets that you buy, all of that has to be first ascertained. What will be the operational cost of it? Does it make sense to integrate into our Air Force? Will it be compatible with the other aircraft that we already have? So you can't just bring in an aircraft and start flying. It will require a lot of maintenance. You have to then depend on America. Their engineers will keep on coming in for inspection and for repair, etc. So it's not that easy. Then in defense, there are always bureaucratic delays, bureaucratic hurdles, because of which the speed of adoption slows down. And that is a problem from India's side mainly because of all the red tape that is involved. When it comes to technology transfer, which I've been discussing, India wants, American firms are not very keen on doing that. It's very simple. Why would a big company transfer their technology? Because once they transfer the technology, then you would not need them. If I tell you how am I making a supercomputer, then you would not come to buy a supercomputer from me the next time, right? So transferring of technology is kind of letting go of your client, letting go of your long-term client. So there is a lot of friction from America that they don't want to transfer the technology. While in on India side, we want the transfer of technology because we don't want to just keep on buying it in the future. Eventually, we want to produce it in India. On the other hand, there are also geopolitical implications. The world is watching how America and India are dealing in defense cooperation. This is especially crucial for countries such as China. China's increasing influence in Indo-Pacific is known to everyone. We both are members of Quad. We both are keeping an eye on expansion of China. That is why India's attempt to increase its surveillance and defense capabilities is being seen very, very closely by China. It can also have an impact on India-Russia relationship. As I told you in the beginning of this particular topic, that India still relies heavily on Russia for our defense equipment. We recently bought the S-400, BrahMos, the joint venture, which we are selling to other countries also now. Sukhois are still a part of our Indian Air Force and the mainstay of them. So increasing the American weapons into India could send a signal to Russia that we are tilting towards them. So India has to balance that. We have done a fair job in balancing it in the past, but we have to keep on working towards this. People also say that with India and America coming closer, we might have a kind of a situation where India is kind of becoming a NATO plus partner. So countries such as Japan, Australia, South Korea, these are not parts of NATO, but they are almost equivalent to them because these countries have been given a kind of a security guarantee by America. For example, if you look at Japan, despite being a leader in nuclear technology, they have never built a nuclear weapon for themselves because Japan has a guarantee from America that the day you need the weapon, tell me, I will sell it to you, but you don't make your own. So India doesn't have that kind of a guarantee with America. India does not even want to come into a military alliance. We have said multiple times that India will never be a part of military alliance, but it does seem that we are coming closer to this NATO plus status that the other Quad countries have with America. Now, on this topic also, there are some other things that you can consider. First, a few years back, India and US signed multiple important defense agreements. These are important for the exam. They have been asked earlier as well. For example, there was an agreement signed called COMCASA, Communication Compatibility Security Agreement, which allows secured communication on same frequency between Indian and US forces. BECA, Basic Exchange and Cooperation Agreement, to access the geospatial intelligence for precision strike. So if India, for example, let's say has to strike a target far away, then how do we make sure that we are actually attacking or we are targeting something which is the position is accurate? We can use the geospatial resources of America. Limoa, that allows logistic of military logistic sharing. For example, if there's an Indian ship nearby America and they need certain repair, they can go to America and the repair will be done. Similarly, there's an American ship nearby and they need certain repairs, they can come in and repairs will happen. This was Limoa. All these agreements have already strengthened Indian American defense ties. And again, as I told you earlier, if you look at the numbers, it's an interesting thing to notice that India has also been exporting a lot of stuff to America in the sector of defense. Our total defense imports from US have been over $20 billion. A lot of US companies like Lockheed Martin, Boeing, etc., have also been selling a lot of products to India. With India focusing on our defense budget, increasing it considerably year on year, India and US partnership in defense specifically will only get stronger from here, provided that they are ready to ensure transfer of technology to India as well. The next article that we have here is based on SEC and the Hague Service Convention. So what is SEC? SEC is an American agency which stands for Securities and Exchange Commission. It's similar to SEBI. It does a similar kind of a role as SEBI does in India. Basically, it looks into any manipulation being done by the companies and the financial sector. Now, if you remember, what had happened was SEC a few months back had said that Adani Group in India has been hiding certain information from investors in America, and they want to start a case against the Adani Group. Now, in this article, we are not going into what this case of the Adani was. We are focusing specifically on Hague Service Convention. Now, what exactly is this, and where does India stand? Now, in simple terms, it's a multilateral treaty designed to standardize process serving legal documents in civil and commercial matters across international borders. So, understand this. Let's say an American court has to send a legal notice to Adani. Now, Adani Group is in India, so how do they send it? The rules and regulations of sending these legal matters or legal notices across the other part of the world or in some other country, those rules come under Hague Service Convention. So it's a legal notification process under which the countries are basically, or the other side is informed that a legal service, a legal notice has been issued against you. India is also signatory to this Hague Service Convention. Now, what are the key features of it and where does it stand? These kind of topics are important for the prelims examination, so do pay attention here. So basically, this convention says that every member country should appoint a central authority that who will handle these notices. For example, if an American court has to send a notice to an Indian company that you did something wrong, you have to appear in front of us. So if they have to send a notice here. So what happens? The convention says in India, there has to be an authority to which the letter will be sent first. That authority in India is Ministry of Law and Justice. Now, some countries, it depends on country to country, some countries allow that American court can directly send a letter to the individual, let's say Mr. Adani. But some other countries like India say that no, you can't send a letter directly to the individuals in our country. You have to send a letter to the government and we will then send it. These are two different kind of ways in which India works. So in which this convention works. As I said, some countries including India do not permit direct service of legal document to individual. We say that if an American court has to send a notice to Adani, send it to our government and we will send it to them. Some other countries prefer domestic notification instead of direct legal notices. Countries can also refuse. It's not that we are bound by that. Just because we are a part of this convention doesn't mean that if an American court sends us the notice that we will have to send it to Adani, we can ignore it. We can say no, it's against our sovereignty, we will not do it. Now, the Security and Exchange Commission in the US has been using this convention to serve legal notices to foreign companies that are supposedly not adhering to the laws in the US. Many Indian firms have also been sent these notices on charges of insider trading, non-complying of norms. This is an allegation against Adani Group, by the way, that when they took money from American investors, they did not disclose the entire information. That is the allegation, that Adani knew that there were certain wrongdoings happening in India. They knew that there are certain cases, investigation going on against them, but they did not inform the American investors. That is why the notice is being sent. Now, the SEC, that is in America, they are facing multiple challenges. They are not being able to reach Adani Group. Why? First, India does not allow direct transfer of the notices. As we discussed, India wants that notice should first be sent to our government officially. Then the government will send it to the concerned individual. So it has to go through the official government process. Second, Indian firms are not bound by accepting American notices because the American laws do not applicable or are not automatically applicable to India. There is delay in the legal cooperation as well. Many authorities in India, when the notices come to India, it does take a long time. It's a step-by-step government process, and especially when it involves a company or an individual which is considered closer to the government, you obviously would expect multiple delays here. Now, when these delays happen, there can also be an implication on Indian companies. Why? Because when American government sees that our notices are not being given importance in India, they would also now increase their scrutiny against Indian companies. They would also now make it tougher for Indian companies to operate in the US, and there may be penalties as well. Because the Indian companies now operating in the US will be seen in a bad light, that if they break a law, their government will not allow us to come and interrogate anything. For the Indian government point of view, Indian government does not really take these kind of conventions too seriously because we think that they are compromising on our sovereignty. India rather prefers to opt for bilateral legal agreements between two countries. See, when you have multinational agreements where all the countries have signed it or most of the countries have signed it, you have to abide by that. But if you have a bilateral agreement, you can have a better understanding between the two. For example, India and US can have a bilateral agreement of how to manage such situations better in the future. That if it's a legal notice in your country, how can you send it to us, so on and so forth. Now, this entire topic of the Hague Service Convention is extremely important. You must understand a few more things about it. India basically follows another approach to handle these situations, which is called Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty. Hague Convention is just one part of it. There are many other treaties that India has signed to have legal cooperation with other countries so that again legal proceedings can carry on in each other's countries. We have such agreements with US, UK, Canada, etc. These agreements allow sharing of evidence, legal service exchange, cooperation in criminal matters also. Apart from this, if India does not have an agreement with other countries to have legal cooperation, then there can be something called letters rogatory that can also be issued. These are requests for legal assistance between two countries. For example, again, let's say there is an Indian who has been charged in an offense in America, and America now wants to investigate that person and wants to talk to the person's family or come to their house, maybe search their house in India. For that, if India does not allow them, they can send a letter of request. These are called letters rogatory. We also have bilateral extradition treaty with multiple countries. Means if let's say a criminal who is wanted in India is in America, we can ask America, request them to send them back. It is happening now with some of the 26/11 terror attack accused in America, and they are extraditing them to India. This can also be a way forward, that the two countries can exchange prisoners. People who are actually wanted in the other countries can be sent back. Now, does it actually affect Indian sovereignty? Indian government says yes. Such conventions go against our sovereignty, because any law of a foreign country, any order, any legal notice of a foreign court cannot automatically be applied to India. It has to be first reviewed as per the Indian laws. Only if the Indian laws also accept this, only then it should be applicable to India. For example, there's a famous case called Mafatlal Industries case in 1997, where the Supreme Court said that Indian courts are not obligated to enforce foreign court rulings. So just because the American court has given a ruling against an Indian doesn't mean the Indian Supreme Court will accept that. Because our Supreme Court is bound by our laws and not the American laws. This is where our sovereignty cannot be compromised in the name of this convention. Now, this legal conflict that America has is not a first time. Earlier also, SEC in America has been trying to send notices to Chinese companies time and time again. Many Chinese companies were punished also in 2012. They were delisted from Nasdaq, that is the stock exchange. European Union also has had conflicts with the demands that SEC had made. SEC asked for a lot of data from European companies. They did not allow that. France and Germany have rejected the SEC legal service request. So it's not that India is the only country that does not allow sharing of such data. Many other countries, many countries that are considered friends of America, they have also denied these legal requests. They have also not accepted whatever data was demanded from the US. There can be possible solutions, as we discussed. If you're not interested in a multilateral treaty, maybe the government should go ahead with a bilateral treaty and agreement. We can also have a better process in place for mutual legal assistance treaty. And we can also see if foreign legal notices can be better reviewed in the country. Maybe have a special branch of the courts to look into whether these kind of foreign notices can be reviewed in a better manner. The next article that we have here is about the olive ridley turtles. A very interesting article. It's an article that says that because of climate change, the sex ratio of olive ridley turtles can change. Very interesting. Why? See, unlike humans, in olive ridley turtles, for example, see, in humans, as soon as the embryo is formed, you can actually notice, you can actually find out whether it's a girl or a boy. That is why India have a law under which we do not allow sex determination. But in turtles, when they lay the eggs, they don't have any gender. The gender of the egg is actually decided by the conditions in which the egg actually is kept. It depends a lot on the temperature. I'll come to that. But first, some key facts about olive ridley turtle. They are found in tropical, subtropical water. As you know, Odisha is the biggest site of laying of these eggs. They come for mass nesting. In Odisha, it's a very famous site. It's a very famous event. People around the world come and notice this. In Odisha coast, especially Rushikulya, Gadadmatha, very famous, and the Devi River mouth. These are the places where they come for mass nesting. Andaman Nicobar Islands, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu coastlines also do see these olive ridley turtles. Now, as I said, in 2025, it was one of the biggest mass nesting events. This is called Aribadas. This is the local name for mass nesting events. And it is seen in the Odisha coast almost every year. It is usually seen in the Rushikulya Rukri in Odisha. It saw 12% increase in the nesting numbers in the last decade. That is because the government has been trying to increase their population. The government has been trying to make sure that fishing activities, etc., are not allowed here in the nesting period specifically. Now, how is it that the rising temperatures have skewed the sex ratio? As I told you earlier, the temperature at which the eggs incubate determines whether the hatchling will be a male or female. So, it's a very interesting case of olive ridley turtles. Warmer sand temperature leads to more female hatchlings, and the cooler temperatures may result in more males. So, the rising temperature lead to fewer male turtles. Now, because of this, what is happening is that because of climate change, as you know, the average temperature is increasing, because of which we are seeing there are fewer and fewer male turtles, and this is creating an imbalance in the sex ratio. In fact, average incubation temperature in Odisha has increased by nearly 2 degrees Celsius in the past 30 years. So we are seeing lesser number of male turtles being born as compared to female turtles. That has become problematic in the long run here. Now, there are many conservation challenges because of which the population of turtles for some years was in danger. First, there is a lot of urbanization along the coast area, along the coast. See, because it's such an important, interesting event, so many people who want to come and see it has become a tourist place. So along the coast, you see many hotels being built, you see many places being built, resorts being built. There is beach tourism, sand mining, etc. Because of which you are actually taking away their habitat. Then there are fishing related mortalities. Turtles are caught in fishing activities. There is an instrument called turtle excluder device. This device allows a turtle to escape from the fishing nets, but it's an additional device, and that is why fishermen don't use it. They think it's an additional cost. Why do we have to use it? Because of which, when people go for fishing, even if they're not looking for turtles, but they catch many turtles, and these turtles also die. Then there are issues of plastic pollution. There is marine debris, microplastics everywhere in the entire ocean. There are many olive lily turtles that eat plastic waste, because of which, again, their population has been in danger. There are issues of hatchling disorientation from artificial lights. A lot of lights in port areas because of resorts, etc. A lot of them have been interfering in the nesting exercise. The government has made strict laws about it, but because of all of this, the conservation efforts are very hard to maintain in the long run. Now, there's some other piece of information about this entire issue. First, what are the laws to protect olive-ringed turtles? We have the Wildlife Protection Act 1972, in which olive-ringed turtles are in Schedule 1, means given the highest protection. Environmental Protection Act also protects them, protects their nesting site. We also have Coastal Regulation Zone, under which industrial activities cannot be carried out in the coastal areas. Because of which, again, some positive efforts have been seen. We just saw 12% increase in the nesting number in the Odisha coast. Around the world, if you look at their IUCN status, that is vulnerable right now. They are listed under Appendix 1 in the sites. That means they cannot be traded internationally. You cannot sell or buy them from one country to the other. India also is a signatory to Indian Ocean Southeast Asian Marine Turtle Memorandum of Understanding. It's an agreement for turtle conservation, especially in India, is a member of this. Do remember this as well, because again, India is the largest nesting site for the olive ridley turtles. We also have many programs running in India. We have something called Operation Olivia, which is an initiative of Indian Coast Guard. They patrol Odisha's coast to protect the turtles. Then we have community-run programs. Fishermen in Odisha participate in these programs. There are NGOs called Sangram, Tree Foundation, etc. All of these have been working. All this information is not in the article. I'm giving you additional information so that you can remember from the examination point of view. Some other solutions include giving fishermen the push and advice to use turtle excluder devices, helping reduce the artificial lighting, help in improving the protection areas in the marine areas as well, help control temperature so that the sex ratio is not very disbalanced. All these things can be done in the long run. The next article that we have is a very interesting one. That is, we have found out that maybe a particular African rat called African giant pouch rat can actually detect tuberculosis by just smelling. Now, tuberculosis, as you know, is a very big problem in India. India has one of the largest cases of tuberculosis in the entire world. One of the big problems with TB or tuberculosis is that it is a very difficult thing to diagnose. Difficult in the sense that many people don't think that they have TB and they don't come to a diagnostic center. It's not that we don't have devices. We have multiple devices. We have multiple tests available to have diagnosis, but many people don't even reach that stage before they pass away. That is very big, because the problem of diagnosis is that it's not a very cheap test, it's an expensive test. India right now has the highest burden of TB globally, with about 26 lakh cases as per 2023 WHO report. And the challenge is that it's a very time consuming test. It's usually called the gene expert test. It gives result in a few hours, but again, it is costly, because of which, especially in the rural areas, people stay away from it. The other problem is this, that there are other tests available which may have certain lower efficiency. We have, for example, a traditional sputum smear microscopy, which has 50 to 60% sensitivity. And the other problem is that if you have drug resistant tuberculosis, that makes it even harder for you to detect. These machines, the gene expert machines, can cost 15 to 20 lakh per machine. That is why some smaller hospitals, especially in the rural areas, don't have these machines. And then they require experts, training, they require electricity, etc., to be operational, because of which the official cases of TB that are registered are much lower than the original number of cases. Just imagine, the cases that are officially registered, even that makes India the highest number of TB cases in the world, but we might have even more cases beyond that. The solution, as it is found out, is American giant pouch rats. These rats, if trained well, are able to smell TB bacteria in the sample with up to 86% accuracy. Imagine. And that too within minutes. It requires months of training, but if it is successful, they are much better, faster, cheaper way than a conventional method of detecting tuberculosis. Now, how exactly do they do that? How exactly that the African giant pouch rat is able to detect the tuberculosis? Now, it is mainly because of their smelling ability. So they have a very strong olfactory sense, very similar to dogs that are able to detect drugs, etc. When they are exposed to any sample that is infected by TB, they can distinguish between the unique smell of Mycobacterium tuberculosis. It's not an overnight thing. These rats have to be trained. They can be trained in 6 to 9 months to identify these samples. But once they do, they have been able to screen 86% of the samples in a positive manner within 20 minutes. They can even test samples where the machines have failed. They have even been able to test samples in HIV positive patients. So, in many HIV positive patients, when they have TB, the machines cannot detect it. But the rats have been successful in detecting in that case as well. And this is where it seems like a pretty interesting discovery, and it has many benefits. As I said, much faster, within 15 to 20 minutes. Cost effective, training costs about 50,000 rupees, so much cheaper as compared to the machines. Very useful, especially in the rural areas, and they are environmentally friendly because, again, you don't have to run electricity for machines, etc. Even if you look at the efficiency, they have been better than machines, and the number of cases that are detected gives them a much higher probability of detecting such cases. On the other hand, there are certain other issues that are related to this particular topic which are not covered here. As I told you earlier, India has a huge TB burden. If you look at around the world, 27% of global TB cases are in India. So, if 1 out of every 4 people who have TB are actually Indians, the government of India is running a national tuberculosis elimination program to eliminate TB by 2025. But see, unless you actually are able to test TB, diagnose TB, you will never be able to cure it. You have to diagnose it, and it's a very, very difficult medical journey. As you know, if you know someone who has had tuberculosis, there is a medicine course that they have to do for 6 months or more. And the problem is, even if you miss to take the medicine for one single day, then you have to start the course once again. So it's a very, very, very rigorous course. These are the different methods available to test TB right now. We have sputum microscopy, we have gene expert machine, we have culture tests, and this is the one that the article talks about. As you can see, if you talk about accuracy and cost of sample together, it is a TB sniffing rats that have the highest, or that has the most probable solution to this disease. Can we use this in India? We can, especially in a rural area specifically, where the TB detection programs have not been running very well. There are certain challenges, you have to train them. Then there are ethical issues also involved here because you're using animals to do this job. You have to first train them, so you require trainers as well. You have to maintain the rats in Indian condition. They are not Indian rats, they are not found in India, they're found in Africa. So to bring a foreign species and then expect that they will be doing a good job in India, not that easy in the long run. The last article for the day is for tattoo lovers. If you're a tattoo lover or if you have tattoo on your body, this article is important for you. This article talks about the impact that the tattoos have, the permanent ink has on your body, how do they affect them, and the techniques that are now available to remove them. Now, how is it that tattoos stay permanent in the skin? What exactly is the procedure? It's a very interesting procedure. And it is because of your body, it is because of your immune system. So, the process is the ink basically is injected into the dermis layer of the skin. So, basically, not the outermost layer, slightly inside. And your immune system thinks that it's an attack, because of which it sends fighters. Fighters means macrophages are sent to fight against this foreign infection. Now, rather than eliminating the ink, what it does is it actually traps the ink particles. It makes sure it doesn't enter the body, it will just trap it there and holds them in place permanently. Even when these macrophages die, new ones will replace, and they will make sure the ink is there in the dermis layer and it is not injected, because they treat it as a foreign substance. So that is how the tattoos actually become permanent. So they make use of your own immune system. Then the question shall be, then how do they fade over time if they are so permanent? They can fade due to external factors, exposure to sunlight, UV radiation. When the skin regenerates, the dermis layer remains intact, but on top of that, there is another layer, epidermis layer, the outermost layer. When it regenerates, the tattoo will become invisible. And there are also ink particles that eventually are cleared out by lymphatic system, because of gradual, and because of it, there will be gradual fading. So even when you have the permanent tattoos also are not always permanent. If you have a tattoo that is, let's say, in the open area, which is exposed to sunlight, it will fade away quickly as compared to areas which are not exposed to sunlight. Now, on the other hand, you would have heard your elders also say it, there are many health risks associated with the tattoos. First, there is a risk of allergy. Many people develop swelling, redness, itching because of the metals that the ink contains. There can be bacterial infection as well, depending upon how clean the tattoo needle was. There can also be issues in your immune system. Immune system may form hard nodules and scars around the ink. You will see many people who have tattoo have very reddish skin around that, have scars around them. That also can be a side effect of how the tattoo actually works in your body. Many inks, as I said, contain heavy metals such as lead, mercury, arsenic, that are extremely bad for the body, and that is why there are many regulations around it. European Union has banned certain pigments to be used in tattoos. Apart from this, nano-sized ink particles have been found that if the ink particles are too small, they can actually get injected into the body in the lymph nodes, and they can have a disastrous impact in the long run. So overall, my advice, do not go ahead with these. Apart from that, they can also have a problem in your diagnostics. When you go for MRI scans, etc., if the ink is metallic, it can actually cause very, very strong irritation, because see, MRI is just a humongous magnet. So when you go inside a magnet and your body has certain metals, it would obviously have a very, very bad impact. So you should avoid that as well. Now, in the past few years, there has been a lot of advancements in the removal tattoo or tattoo removal technology. Many people have regretted having a tattoo, they want to remove it. The easiest one, or the most common one rather, is the removal of tattoo using laser. These are high intensity laser beams to break the ink particles, and then they're removed by the lymphatic system. Then tattoo removal creams also are available around the entire world. There's also surgical things that are available, but that is usually the last option, when they take out certain layer of the skin so that your ink actually comes out. But that is the last option. The most common option available is the laser tattoo removal that is available around the world. Now, some more information about it from this particular article. See, tattoo art is not very new. It's a very, very, very ancient art. For example, in ancient Greece, it is said that tattoos are symbols of status and religious belief. Not just this, there's a 5,300-year-old mummy called Ozzy the Iceman that had 61 tattoos for therapeutic and ritualistic purposes. Even in Japanese history, Japanese samurais used to have full body tattoos that was a symbol of bravery and identity. Modern times also have seen tattoos being used for various purposes. There are medical tattoos. For example, scientists are working on certain tattoos that will change their color depending on your blood sugar level. Those are called diabetes alert. So these are called bio ink tattoos. They will use bio ink that will change color depending on the sugar levels in your body. This is again a very interesting discovery in this era, but there have to be strict regulations about what can or cannot be used in tattooing. India right now does not have a nationwide regulatory body for tattoo parlors. We do have certain standards set up by BIS. They recommend sterilized equipment, etc. Some states also have been issuing certain guidelines for tattoos and their hygiene, but we don't have an India-wide law. The other aspects of tattoo also, which are used in today's time, many people increasingly are now adopting these tattoos so much that many companies also have now accepted this. Earlier, many companies did not used to accept an employee having a tattoo, but now that also has gone out of the window. Studies suggest that 1/3 of the people with tattoo consider removal due to career, relationship, or aesthetic changes. So, permanent tattoo, not a great choice because you never know. Your reason for having a tattoo may be changed in the future. These were the important articles that we had. Now, a quick test for you to see if you are able to grasp whatever we studied. First question. Which of the following Supreme Court judgments reinforce the need for independent election commission? SR Bommai case, not really. It was basically about federalism in India. TN Session, yes. Keshanda Bharti, no. Basis such a case. Mohinder Gill versus Chief Election Commissioner, yes. These were the two cases, 2 and 4, that specifically led to Supreme Court talking about the need for having an independent election commission. Which of the following committees have recommended electoral reforms in India? Dinesh Goswami, Indrajit Gupta, Vora Committee, Tarkonde. Out of these, the only one that is not related to elections is the Vora Committee. Vora Committee was about criminalization in politics. All the others were about election reforms. All the others were about specifically election reforms in India, but not the third one. 1, 2, and 4. B would be the correct answer here. The Javelin missile system recently in the news is used for, we just discussed this. It is used by Ukraine as well against Russia. It is anti-tank guided missile system. Next, the Hague Service Convention primarily deals with, we just discussed this, service of legal documents in foreign jurisdiction. Consider the following about olive ridley turtles listed as endangered. Isn't endangered? No, it is vulnerable. Nesting sites in India mostly found around the Odisha coast. Yes. Sex of hatchling determined genetically at time of fertilization. No, not genetically. We discussed it's about the external factors, mainly temperature. The answer thus is B. 2 only here would be correct. Which of the following statements about tuberculosis detection methods is correct? Sputum microscopy is the most accurate test available. Gene expert testing is affordable, widely available. Culture tests are considered gold standard but take weeks. And rats, the TB sniffing rats have 100% accuracy. No, the answer is the culture test, which are the gold standard. Gold standard means the best, almost 100%, but they give multiple weeks to give the results. This was the session for the day, slightly longer. I hope you enjoyed it. You learned something new. I'll see you in the next one. If you're new here, do hit the like and the subscribe button as well. My name is Harshmeet Singh. Bye-bye. Jai Hind.